Hello, world, and welcome back to another episode from Beyond the Matrix. My name is Sarah, and today we're taking a look at Saturn for Saturn's Day. So today, Saturn is at 27 degrees of Aquarius, which in traditional astrology is one of his domiciles. And in modern astrology is ruled by Uranus. And it's interesting because I think I've read that the reason they named Uranus, the planet, what they did was to kind of keep in with the gods, because the rest of the planets were named after Roman gods. And so they chose Uranus. But the funny thing is, Uranus was actually the father of Saturn. And so when assigning significations to Uranus, the modern astrologers put Uranus as the ruler of Aquarius. And so there's this battle between Saturn and Uranus, you could say, for rulership of Aquarius. However, most astrologers will say that they're co-rulers. So that's what that means, is that once we got the newer planets, they were assigned to zodiac signs. And in this case, it's funny because it's this feud between, well, it's father killing son. And so Uranus there is representative of things like rebellion and revolution. And those are actually themes of Aquarius too. And so that's kind of how they made that connection. But we're talking about Saturn, and Saturn is this father archetype. So what I've noticed is my relationship with Saturn has evolved in a way that I used to feel punished by Saturn. I used to feel like Saturn didn't have my back. And I used to feel like a victim of Saturn, let's say. Whereas now, because I've gone through my Saturn returns, it's been a very personal journey for me with Saturn and my Saturn return. Currently, Saturn is leaving my moon alone, finally, as the sun approaches my moon. And so this feels, like, yeah, I've got this new relationship with this archetype. So let's talk about Saturn and Aquarius and what's going to be happening for the week. Like I said, Saturn is beginning to finally leave the sign of Aquarius, where he has been since at least 2021, maybe a little bit before 2020. And I continue to bring it up that it's interesting that the theme of Saturn is restriction. And what happened to us in 2020, friends? Remember? So that's one of the significations of Saturn, is constriction, restriction, and things taking longer than you think they're going to take, because you're actually having to put effort into it. This is about discipline. And the reward from Saturn is the payoff of what you have done, the work you've put in, being proud of yourself for having done the thing, and not giving a shit what anybody else thinks about it. That's the, like, of course, not veering into self-righteousness, not trying to push that onto people, but finally letting go of what the crowd thinks, because especially Aquarius, but Saturn is about boundaries and about defining yourself by what you are not, in the case of Aquarius. So right now, Saturn is trine to the moon, and this is a harmonious aspect. It feels like things are falling into place with trines. It feels like very natural. being that the moon is in Libra, again, that's the scales, that's about balance, balancing yourself with other. And Saturn is leaving the sign of Aquarius, not today, but gradually throughout this month, we'll be leaving the sign of Aquarius. And it's a culminating message. We finally learned the lesson. Today, that can be very supportive for our emotions and our overall emotional well-being. This to me says something like devotion, myself with other. How do I devote myself to other in a way that I'm not forgetting about myself and forgetting about me as an individual as well? So especially with Saturn being in the sign of the humanitarian, this does lean into the collective and us balancing ourselves with the collective. But it's important to remember that Libra isn't just about other. Libra is also about self and balancing. It can feel something like finding your place, finding who you are. That's what this can feel like to me. And I think one more word to really describe how this might feel is being responsible, having integrity. I said one word, but still, responsibility and integrity is what I see with this combination of the moon and Saturn. And then Saturn enters into a square with the moon in Scorpio by Monday. Transcendence is a word that comes to mind, although not an easy transcendence because there's a square here. Squares are of the nature of Mars, so there's a conflict here. But transcending from that conflict. And I use the word transcending because Scorpio is about death and rebirth. There is a bit of an ego death here, from what I gather. There's a bit of intensity because it's Scorpio. It can feel like a cathartic release, is what I'm seeing here. And here's the big one. Saturn and the Sun will conjoin on Thursday. Now, we could be feeling this energy days before and days after, so I don't want to focus too much on exactly which day it's going to occur, but Sun and Saturn are both archetypes of the father. Saturn, this kind of strict, disciplined father. The Sun is the ideal to which we strive, so it's kind of this on a pedestal type of father archetype. With this happening in the sign of Aquarius, this is the sign of the humanitarian, but also the rebel, the revolutionary. A general message that I was starting to receive yesterday was about, in the spirit of Aquarius, not giving a fuck, not giving a fuck what authority thinks, while still being a virtuous individual. And in fact, that offering you the respect from the authority, the authority figure respecting you for not giving a shit what they think about you, and therefore other people, like not giving a shit what other people think about you, not giving a shit what the authority figure thinks about you. And then somehow this turns into them having respect for you because they realize now you're on their level. Now you can have a conversation. And it, particularly as a woman that sought validation from a partner for a very long time, and to the extent of worshiping this person, thinking they could do no wrong. This translates really well to some people's relationship with their religion. And as someone that very much appreciates religion, I'm not saying that to be critical of religion. I'm saying that because I think it's an opportunity for people to reassess, not under my, what does the Buddha say? Never believe anything I say. Go look at it yourself, whatever. And to quote the Buddha is pretty bold, but and especially to do it improperly here. But the point is coming across, I think, that our relationships are conditioning for our psyche, for our mind, for how we go about our day to day, what we believe about ourselves. Those are good words for Sun Saturn. What do you believe about yourself? And who is inflicting that belief upon you? It's yourself, first and foremost. But you allow other people to make you feel a certain way. And what I did in order to resolve my mental conflict with who I was in my relationship that I left, and again, very devout, worshiping this person. And I see this in my mother with her Catholicism, and I love her to death and beyond. But she is in a role of servitude. She feels like she needs to serve. And when I got out of my relationship, see, of course, this is my mother. And so I went to my father, my own dad, and tried to figure out what scared him. I asked him what he was most afraid of. And I asked him the most terrifying thing that he had ever been experienced. And what was interesting to me was, despite him having been a soldier and a taxidermist, the scariest thing that he ever experienced was being submerged in water 90 feet down and blacking out and then coming to and not knowing where he was. And it was a lot more dramatic than that because he tried to bolt to the surface. And if you know anything about scuba diving, you know that you can't do that because nitrous oxide, whatever, you'll get narcosis. I think that's what it's called. And so his buddy grabbed him, pulled him down, took his spare respirator, and I'm using all the wrong words. He took the octopus and put it in my dad's mouth. So it's his spare breather. And that was when my dad came to, because my dad was passed out. He was very fortunate that his partner, his buddy, turned and saw him and prevented him from bolting up towards the surface because you'll get the bends. And so as my dad's telling me this story, I'm like, okay, like I'm trying to build an archetype of a big brother because in that time of my life, I thought everybody was going to die immediately. It just, this whole world seemed out of control. I moved back home during a hurricane, during COVID. So it was like, it seemed like the world was ending in this weird way where it wasn't like apocalyptic, the world is ending, but I thought my world was ending. I thought my parents are going to die soon. My grandparents are going to die soon. And so I tried to build an archetype of my dad because I needed a man to protect me. I needed the masculine to contain and protect me. And that worked for 2 years to calm my ass down. I was in a manic state. Manic. Crazy. And I had the space to be that way. But I still felt judged. It was a self-inflicted judgment. It was based on years of conditioning with my ex, of him telling me things about myself that weren't true. But I felt that from my dad. I felt like he was the one that was judging me and had an opinion about me. And then yesterday, I realized, see, I don't think any of my family members will ever watch this, so I feel okay about saying it, but my dad's wife's son was talking to me about how he doesn't understand how people come to learn taxidermy from my dad and question him. How could they question him? He knows so much. He's been doing this for 30 years. Why are they questioning him? And me thinking in my head, like, I know the story. Like, I no longer worship my father. Let's just put it that way. It isn't such that my dad can do no wrong. I see where my dad has done wrong. And I know him as a flawed human and I love him, but he isn't perfect. And so, yeah, my dad's stepson was like, I just don't understand. And on top of that, Yeah, he's getting really annoyed with the questioning. And I said, well, it's not difficult to annoy him. And that felt like, wow, go tell him that. Yeah, go tell him that. Go tell him I said that because I have a sense. This is like me gossiping. I have a sense that people want to talk about other people to understand them and to share thoughts about them, whatever. Well, I just had this sense that my dad's stepson would go and tell him that I said that. And I was so happy that I didn't give a fuck if he did. Because it's true. My dad knows that's true. It's very easy to annoy my dad. He's a Scorpio rising. So it's like not the nicest person in the world. But I sense this from other people too. I sense this from other people that speak with my dad that he just kind of demands respect. It's about his aura. And there again, he's a Scorpio rising, so he's Mars ruled, which is a soldier, which demands respect. But I finally just could be like this like state of laughing about it, laughing about people not having respect for him, not getting offended, not thinking, yeah, why don't they respect him? I don't understand. It's like, you don't understand? You don't understand why people are going to try to question someone when they're going to a class to learn from them, why they would have questions about, how to do things. Of course, never surpass the master, if I'm not mistaken, from Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. And so I wouldn't, trust me, I don't ask questions in a way that it's, well, I do it this way. Why don't you do it this way? Like, I don't do that. I take from mentors advice. And I'm doing this in my own life too with working at a garden. I'm working at a garden now because I want to be a gardener. And there are elders there that are teaching me. And I don't question them. I ask them questions, but I don't question their authority. But I also don't bow down to their feet. I'm also not, you know, sucking up to them. So I think that's what I see about Sun and Saturn. Now, of course, I'm going to read a little bit from Renn Butler's The Archetypal Universe because I don't know if that story is relatable for everybody. But that was kind of the culminating message that I'm starting to come to because trust me, Saturn is in Aquarius for me. My moon is in Aquarius. My midheaven is in Aquarius. So I feel like I am intimately connected with the lessons of Saturn. So, like I said, because I know my story isn't completely relatable for everybody, but hopefully somebody can relate, I'm going to read from Renn Butler's The Archetypal Universe about Saturn and the Sun together. And I like to do this so I can learn alongside. It's themes that I know, but Renn Butler has a beautiful way of putting it into words. So it says about Sun and Saturn, qualities of responsibility and self-discipline, modesty and integrity, authenticity and centeredness, defined self-consciousness, a focus on work and duty. In the shadow, rigid ego structures, inhibited vitality and confidence, slavish identification with one's work or social role, habitual self-denial. So the shadow side is really leaning into that asceticism that I'm not worthy, I don't deserve, I must serve. And in characters and themes, it says, defined self-consciousness, fully developed ego, qualities of self-assurance and poise, conservative virtues and values, caution and self-restraint, realism and practicality, patience and self-discipline, reliability and self-sufficiency, responsibility and commitment, stern individualism, somber dignity. Quote, I will be good. Queen Victoria. focused energy and attention, serious purpose, a capacity for hard work. Work is alone noble. Increased confidence with work achieved. Disciplined creativity, clarity of expression, qualities of sincerity and integrity, authenticity and centeredness, an ability to sacrifice one's pride for the good of others, modest and balanced aspiration, deliberate appreciation, a resonance with people who are older, mature, or well established. So those are the themes of Sun and Saturn together. And keep in mind, in the sign of Aquarius, so this kind of rebel. And from there, by the time we reach next Saturday, the Sun is just going to be leaving this conjunction with Saturn. Will be in the final degree of Aquarius, the energetic degree as it's called, and will be leaving the sign of Aquarius. Here again, another shift is happening. Saturn will be moving into the sign of Pisces and will not re-enter Aquarius. It's going to retrograde, but it's going to be within the sign of Pisces. So we bid farewell to Saturn and Aquarius, and good riddance. Saturn will return to Aquarius in about 27 years or so. It's not the last we'll ever see of Saturn and Aquarius, but for the next nearly 30 years, this will be the last time Sun and Saturn meet here in this sign of Aquarius. So big shifts happening for the next couple of months. It's getting exciting in the astrology world. Springtime is when we start our new year. And there's been a lot of interesting things going on in the astrology community. It's kind of fun to be a part of it now, finally. And there's been this debate about whether or not whole sign house systems, which is what I use, whole sign house system, was a thing. Like, was this made up? And the reason being, all the themes are coming up in my head, and I'm not going to be able to explain them very well. Things that are antique, things that are old, things that are cold, things that are dry, things that are dusty. That's Saturn. Artifacts, okay? So then there is this debate as to whether or not whole sign house system was made up by Project Hindsight, which was this group of astrologers that were reading the ancient text in its original form, in its original language. They were translating that over to revive ancient Hellenistic astrology and other I believe they were also working with other origins of astrology, but just trying to translate the ancient text. And there's this woman. This is where it gets exciting. It's just, you could pick a side, like how the Super Bowl is for everybody. Yeah, that's like what we're doing here. So this one woman, and perhaps, definitely her followers, but just this one woman decided to release a video in which she claims that the whole sign house system was made up by this group of astrologers that were going back through the ancient texts. And one of the astrologers from the community that uses whole sign house system made a 6-hour video about, and I'm saying this because I don't think that my audience is necessarily astrologers. So I'm not going to name any names or anything, but as the authority, he stood up and said, you know what? I have to speak on behalf of people that are no longer here to speak for themselves. And it's like this Saturn-Uranus struggle where Uranus is like, you know what? I don't give a fuck anymore. I am going to tell you like it is. And it's hard to define who's Saturn and who's Uranus in this situation because it isn't, it's almost like it's the archetype of the argument itself, because they're looking back at ancient text, and also the new cohort of astrologers are using whole sign house system as opposed to Placidus. And this makes this woman very nervous because she doesn't like the whole sign house system because she doesn't use the whole sign house system. So she's trying to burn the whole sign house system. And so anyway, it's been fun to watch. It's one of those grab your popcorn situations because I don't have a dog in the fight. I use the whole sign house system, but I'm not fundamentalist about it. I simply use it because my instructor uses it and this is how he's teaching me. It could be that maybe one day I decide, oh, I actually like Placidus better. But so far, I've loved the whole sign house system. And for someone to, okay, and Saturn is also ruler of feigned appearances or disingenuous. Well, this woman is coming with this argument that's disingenuous. It's a lie. It's a feigned appearance. So that's something that's been interesting boiling in the astrology community. You think that we're not that interesting, but we're interesting. So anyway, all that being said, ooh, it's getting juicy. It's getting juicy because once Saturn moves into Pisces, it's on, baby. The season is changing. Things are different. Finally, Saturn leaves Aquarius. You have no idea. It's been just so, so constricting, so restricting, so limiting. But there's a huge reward for all of us that have suffered these past 2 years. There's a huge payoff coming. Don't worship the payoff, by the way. This is the point. Stay in this being mode of not needing the things, but developing yourself, being virtuous, and realizing that's where the goodness comes in. When you like yourself at the end of the day, that's what's most important. In order to like yourself at the end of the day, you can't be a sellout. You can't sell your soul to the devil. If your suffering is something you're spreading by complaining, maybe think about how your energy affects other people around you. So that's my message from Saturn for the week. Keeping other people in mind, don't inflict your suffering on other people, and be grateful for the suffering because there is a lesson in that suffering, in that self-sacrifice. It's not asceticism here. It's not eliminating all the things that make you happy because that's still keeping in mind that having mode, that these are the things I want. Oh, I can't have them. That's just the opposite. So it's recognizing our relationship with everything around us and how we can be in good relationship with everything around us. So yeah, fun spirited message here from Saturn. I meditate before I start these. That's how I get to where I am. So for me, this is Saturn coming through. This is Saturn in the form of me. All right. So I'll be back very soon to talk about some more planets. And until then, have a great week.